Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you are doing fantastic. So let's continue our reading of Khalid bin Waleed. I really like this book because it reads like an action novel and the writing style isn't very dry. So go ahead and listen to this as you are on your commute. You're on the train. You're on the subway. You're petting your parrot. Whatever it is you're doing. Bismillah. Okay, so we were at the Khalid. He was proposing some talks to Musaylima, and Musaylima ran off. With shouts of Allahu Akbar, the Muslims again went into the attack. They fought with fresh vigor and dash. At last, the attack they fought with fresh vigor, and victory beckoned. The apostates began to fall back as the Muslims struck the sword and dagger. The retrograde movement of the apostates gathered speed. The spirits of the Muslim rose as they redoubled their efforts. Then the infidel front broke into pieces. Okay, so before they were trying to break the front, if you remember, and Khalid made sure to exploit the psychological opportunity of when Muslima retreated, he left. He wanted to get really close to execute him, but he turned on his heels and ran. Okay. Muslima could do nothing. His top commander, Rajal, was dead. Okay, so Rajal, Rajjal, he's outie. It was now the commander of his right wing, Muhakim. Alright, so we have Rajal, and then we have Muhakim, that's a cool name, who came to rescue of the apostates. O Bani Hanifa, he shouted. The garden, enter the garden, I shall protect your rear. But the disintegration of the apostates had gone too far to be halted. The bulk of the army broke and fled, scattering in all directions. Only about a fourth of Muslima's army remained in fighting shape, and this part hastened to the walled garden, while Muhakim covered its retreat with a small rear guard. Oh, okay, so you see here, they're retreating, and Muhakim is covering their retreat. And so they're going inside a walled garden. We've heard about those, but some of us forget the architectural times that were of the past. And so these kinds of walled homes, walled gardens must have been very beautiful. And so they're going on in there. The rear guard was soon cut to pieces by the Muslims, and Muhakim fell to the arrow of the Caliph's son, Abdur Rahman. Awesome, look at that. So he got an arrow blasted up into him by the son of the Caliph. Wow. So Muhakim and Rajal, they have been eliminated from the game. The Muslims now pursued the fleeing apostates across the plain of Aqraba, striking down the stragglers left and right. Yeah, see, the formation is very important to protecting whenever you're in retreat. Those solid units, when you have scragglers, they get picked off because they can't handle the cavalry. Soon they arrived at the walled garden where a little over 7,000 apostates, Muslima among them, had taken shelter. So he's retreated inside the walled garden, and he's got about 7,000 soldiers. The infidels had closed the gate. As they looked at the high wall that surrounded the vast garden, they felt safe and secure. Little did they know. The major portion of the Muslim army assembled in the vicinity of the Garden of Death. Okay, so there's a place called the Garden of Death. It was now afternoon, and the Muslims were anxious to get into the garden and finish the job that they had started early that morning. Oh, like, they're all up in that garden. Ain't time for eating fruit. The wall stretched on all sides as an impenetrable barrier. with the, oh, that's interesting, with the gate securely bolted from within. So here, you can think about how that looks. Where you have a garden, so you got some food for a little bit, the walls protecting you, and then the bolted gate. So these siege tactics and retreat tactics were very important in that time, and it kind of shows you the wits of both sides. There was no siege equipment nor time to spend on a siege. Okay, so they weren't going to do a siege. While Khalid searched for his brain for ideas, an old warrior by the name of Bara bin Malik, who stood in the group that confronted the gate, said to his comrades, "Throw me over the wall into the garden." His comrades refused, for Bara was a distinguished and much respected companion, and they hesitated to do something which would certainly result in his death. Wow, he's bold. But to do something, but Bara insisted. At last his comrades agreed to his request and lifted him on their shoulders near the gate. So look at that. What? I wonder if they're going to toss him over, he's going to blend in, and then go find out where Muslima is, and then take him out that way. Or maybe he's going to unlock the gate or something. He got his hands onto the edge of the wall, swung himself up and jumped into the garden. In a minute or so, he had killed 2 or 3 infidels who stood between him and the gate. Wow. Look at that. Now that's a strong character right there. He's like, you know what? I gotta take one for the team. Toss me up over the wall. Take some out. We gonna get in that gate. We gonna do it. And before others could intercept him, he had loosened the heavy bolt. The gate was flung open and a flood of Muslims roared through it like water thundering through a beach in a dam. The last and most glory phase of the Battle of Yamama had begun. Okay, so remember, the Battle of Yamama. So they got through the gate. Oh, man, that's epic. What a total legend, man. And let's just remember his name was Bara bin Malik. And so he was an older warrior, so seasoned, battle-tested, battle-hardened. He's ready. And they just tossed him up over the wall, and he took out some dudes who was there and opened the gate to the garden. Initially, the infidels were able to contain the advance of the Muslims, who were confined by the gate to a narrow front and lacked elbow room. That's kind of true. Certain mountain passes, if there's a small trail and you have the mountain passes between you, you could have the biggest army in the world, but if you have 2 men abreast and you have archers on there, they're going to get picked off. So the landscape is very important. Sun Tzu, The Art of War, if you remember, I read that about 2 years ago on the channel. He talked a lot about when you're looking for battle, where do you go? The landscape, the territory is extremely important. That's why in the Korangal Valley in Afghanistan, it's famous that the people who live there understand where to hide. They know how to navigate it. But our soldiers didn't know. They'd get picked off more easy. Further, others said, and during Vietnam, the Vietnamese understood the jungles. They knew where to hide, and it was to their advantage because they had the home field advantage. Even though their territory got destroyed for a while, the people knew where to hide. And when Hernan Cortez was going into Mexico, the smaller tribes who were subservient to the Aztecs, some of them fought Cortez before he convinced them to fight with him and alongside him to take out the Aztec leader. They knew the terrain as well, and they knew where to hide, and were very stealthy in how they did it. So here when we see that the gate of this walled garden changed the way in which the flow of soldiers could happen, you could totally get it. But steadily the Muslims cut their way through the apostates, who began to fall in heaps under the attackers' blows. The apostates stepped back as the Muslims poured into the garden in ever-increasing numbers. So they literally, like, going in. You have to, at that time, there's no hiding. You know, you can't send a drone. You gotta go in, and everybody has a... We had to look up what was the name and style of particular blades they used, but their daggers, their swords, slicing and dicing calves, stomachs, you name it. They had to be so brave to go in there. And think about those who had to, those ridiculous apostates who had to muster up their courage and accept that they had retreated. Now they're on the defense, and now the Muslims are on the offense, so they have to really dish it out to really hold the gate, hold the area, and stem them back. You know? It's interesting, and it's really fascinating that that brother was able to take out some of the infidels there and then loosen the heavy bolt. And doing it before somebody sliced, you know, his neck from his body. So the intensity, the focus, the adrenaline, they did what the mission said. Very fascinating. I mean, and as the people are falling, you gotta watch your step. You can't be crying about smells. You can't be crying about the sight of blood. You can't be crying about, you know, it's hot. I don't want to do this. They went in knowing it could be the last time they ever do something. For both sides as well. When you know your enemy is coming for you, and when you know your enemy is going to try to prevent you from entering, it changes the dynamics entirely. I mean, you don't want some weakling in there who can't handle the smell of urine and poo, because some people, when they die, they poop themselves, you know, the dust, everything. I mean, you're hearing people holler, shout commands, scream. It's really just so much going on, and they had to just go on through. And that is something very commendable. You can see the bravery of this time period. Quite enlightening. I hope you enjoyed.